Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin. Before it does, two public announcements. Firstly, out of consideration for your fellow patrons, please turn off your cell phones. And secondly, if you're one of those I love Pink Floyd but I can't stand Roger's politics people, you might do well to fuck off to the bar.
Hey! Roger! Leave us alone!
Like doing what to the Jewish people?
By his anti-Semitism.
How is it anti-Semitic? What do you mean?
I've told you the legal definition of anti-Semitism, but you're not listening to
Hang on. Let's work on the assumption that he was just targeting Israel. Do you think it's legitimate to target a state existence?
Palestinian lives are important, not only Jewish lives. Jewish lives are not the only ones which are important.
Go away from here! You said I killed children! Did you see me kill children? You animal! You animal! Go away from here! Go away from here!
Come in.
We are just chewing the cud, as they say.
Well, we don't. Yeah, we are, but he'll never stop rolling.
He's taking a picture of the wine being poured.
He's a bit of an autocrat.
He's total. Yeah, I'm scared of him. Really scared of him. No, I think.
You know what I think's really scary about him?
What?
His fucking hat. I've just re-recorded Dark Side of the Moon, and it's a beautiful thing that I've done. And I did it because it was the 50th anniversary. And I thought, there's something here that has been growing in me, and that I need to express myself. God only knows it's not what we would choose to do. And I can only do it by re-recording this record because people haven't quite got it yet. When I wrote it, it's an invitation to anybody who might listen. The original record I'm talking about now, to them to breathe in the air and don't be afraid to care. I know it sounds like something that some 15-year-old would have scribbled down on a, shorthand pad or something, and it can be dismissed as teenage, infantile kind of, but it's not. At the bottom of it it's a simple text, and it all goes in order, and then you get to time,
ticking away the moments that we've all seen how I nearly picked up my phone. It's worse now than it was when I was 29 with that song, what I wrote. Thank you, Ernie Wise. But and then it goes on, and then it gets to the end, and it gets to Eclipse, which is at the end of the record, and it's got that list: all you touch, all you see, all your life will ever be. Yeah. And it's important as well, because it's a very simplistic philosophical text, but it tells truth, and that's why I remade it, I think, largely.
Why politics and why this? What happened to you? What's your experience? What are your feelings? What brought you to this kind of desire to do this?
They killed my father. February the 18th, 1944. Nazis.
Yeah.
I'm talking about now.
Yeah.
Well, these people are the new Nazis. Mm. So I think that's it, really. But that obviously affected my mother hugely. Yeah. But it affected me hugely as well in lots of ways. But also, my mother used to take my brother and I to all the political meetings she went to because, you know, we didn't have nannies or anything, so whatever. We did always have a lodger because she was a school teacher, so she couldn't not have somebody in the house to let us in after school or whatever. But I'll never forget going to a meeting at the Quaker, at the Friends Meeting House in Cambridge, which is where we lived, one evening. And on the way home, probably that big, you know, on the way home, my mum saying to me and to my brother, do you know where we were this evening? No. It's called the Friends Meeting House, that big room. And we'd been there to a British-China Friendship Association meeting, or something like that. Grainy old black and white films of Chinese communists fighting the Japanese puppet government or whatever from 1948. Yeah, and he said, well, they're a Christian group. And she said, as you know, I'm an atheist and I can't subscribe to their religious beliefs, but I want you to always remember this. And I said, what, Mum? You know, they're very good people. And again, I feel quite emotional because, you know, the idea that doing the right thing transcends labels or religious beliefs or politics even.
Or colour.
Or colour,
or
obviously.
Gender.
Or gender.
Or anything, or it should do.
Exactly.
It should do.
Yeah. And if you're lucky enough to have your mum, and I'm lucky enough to have my mum, then maybe we're lucky enough to have learned this. I mean, oh my God, I'm glad my mother didn't live to see Keir Starmer's Labour Party. It's bad enough that she lived to see Tony Blair, who was disgusting in every possible way that you can imagine. But Starmer, oh my goodness. And when it was in, and the people knew it, how many people joined the Labour Party? Young people as well, because of Jeremy Corbyn and because he was actually interested in the needs of poor people and the Palestinians, okay, and people with hearts and souls who wanted to believe in something better, and the working class and reorganising the working class. I went to the Miners' Gala dinner in London about 6 months ago, and it was so moving. And that's like in memory of when we had a working class that was organised and that could do. I mean, I'm not putting down the miners. My grandfather was a miner in County Durham, a small village called Copley, and he was down the mines until he joined the army in the First World War, and he was killed in September 1916 on the Somme, in the Battle of the Somme.
So that's your grandfather and your father?
Yeah. First World War and Second World War. So, but you know, the ruling class are good at it, and if they can't do it with a baseball bat or or a police baton. I nearly said shovel, but that's giving them too much credit. The miners might fight back with a shovel, but no, it's the paid muscle that they have. And in America, it's even worse than it was in here. But you don't need a very long memory to go back to 1926 and to see what, the famous, hugely popular British bulldog in British politics, Winston Churchill, was doing then, and where his heart actually lay. So it's, can we reorganize? I made that record in 1983, I think, the final cut. It's not called a Requiem for the Post-War Dream for nothing. It's called a Requiem for the Post-War Dream because I was mourning the death of the National Health Service back then. And that's that wonderful documentary that John Pilger's made about the death of the National Health Service and what it is. And it is the idea of a social democracy beyond our grasp at any point in the future. I bloody well hope not, because it's the only possible organisation of our country that can save it. It's been thrown away, so now we live as this pitiful vassal state of the US empire with no voice and very little life since the Brexit nonsense. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but...
So, okay, we know what happened to you with this last tour, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Right, okay. Why this tour? Why have they done it to this tour? Or have they done it to other tours?
That's such a good question. Yeah, why this tour? And obviously it's a question that I've asked interminably since they started doing it on this tour. I go, well, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Well, this leather coat and these crossed hammers and things, yeah. I wrote this piece. It's a piece of theatre that I wrote in 1979.
I remember it.
Why now? And it was an attack on fascism then.
Yes.
It's a bold, satirical attack on what can happen to you if you're not careful and you slide down the slippery slope towards totalitarianism, particularly if it's on the far right of politics as we understand it. And you end up with a fascist regime that doesn't care about human rights or any of the things that your mum or my mum care about, or that I care about, or they don't care about any of that stuff. That's irrelevant to them. They care about power, and in certain regimes' cases, they care about money as well. But mainly they care about power and privilege, and also a lot of them care about differentiations in terms of race or religion. And so, why now? I think, and I could be wrong about this, but what is the turning? What provided the extra threat that I needed to be destroyed? And I'm so glad you've asked me, because I don't know, but if I look into it, which I will do, I haven't written this bit of my memoir yet, because it's only just happened to me. I will discover a turning point that they couldn't bear. That was maybe I'd been in their sights since the Russell Tribunal in New York in October 2012.
I appear before you as a representative of the 4th Russell Tribunal on Palestine, and in that capacity I am representing global civil society. We found that the State of Israel is guilty of a number of international crimes. 1. Apartheid. 2. Ethnic cleansing. 3. Collective punishment of the civilian population, explicitly prohibited by the Geneva Convention, Article 33.
Because my experience tells me that once you're in their sight, they do not let you go. And one thing I think I have thought, because obviously before I thought of asking you it, I was thinking about this question myself. and thinking that actually this is more about them and where they're at the moment
Yeah.
than it is about you.
They're desperate.
Yeah. I think they are feeling very vulnerable given the awfulness of the Netanyahu regime and what is becoming increasingly clear to people
Yeah.
is the state.
Day by day.
Absolutely. So I mean, I don't know, you have a think too, but for me, I think it's about them, not about what you're doing. I don't think what you're doing has changed.
No.
I think what's changed is what we're seeing in Israel at the moment, which as far as I'm concerned is a natural development from where they started.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Zionism as it's practiced in Israel, as far as I'm concerned, has got to end up becoming increasingly right-wing, increasingly authoritarian, increasingly fascist. So that's my thoughts.
As demonstrated last week by Flag Day in Jerusalem, with thugs marching through the streets, kicking Palestinians to death if they can find one.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, was it yesterday after what happened in Jenin, you had, it was really interesting, I don't know if you caught this, but apparently the IDF were too stretched to go and protect Palestinian villages from being burned. You know, I've never seen them use that excuse when it's been the other way round, but apparently the IDF were a little bit too stretched for that.
I think they were egged on by the Germans, because it's in Germany in 2018 they started to try and ban me from working in Germany.
Yeah.
So that's 5 years ago. So they've had 5 years to stew there. So it's 5 years since my 2 visits to the graves of Sophie and Hans Scholl and Christopher Probst.
Yeah.
Both on film, well, just photographs, because we took photographs. So that's 5 years of attention to the detail of the murders. So that's something that is really interesting, is that, and it didn't even occur to me when we started to we're going back to Germany again, that they would still be at it, even though it was very upsetting in 2018 when not a single, well, one paper spoke to me, because I thought I could pick up the phone to Der Spiegel or Bild or somebody and go, "Oi, I've got some lunatic down here called," what was her name, somebody or other, who's got hold of the local radio station and has got them to remove their name as a sponsor of my show from the ticket and stop advertising it on their radio. What is going on? What is she talking about? Well, she says you're an anti-Semite. Well, on what grounds? Everybody who knows me knows I'm not, obviously. It's stupid. What's wrong with you people? But it was like, already then, it was like verboten to say anything about Palestine in Germany.
So you, this year,
Yeah.
you were in court in Germany.
Yeah.
And you won.
Yeah.
How and why? I mean, we all know what's
Because
going on
because
there.
they still have law in Germany, and it's against the law to cancel my show. And the judge had to read 28 pages of what... First of all, they tried to cancel my show on the grounds that I was an anti-Semite and shouldn't be allowed to perform in the Festhalle. And he had a quick look at me and said, "No, he's not. I mean, where's your evidence? There is no, the pig, the Star of David, the this or that." Well, he's explained all that, and that was 10 years ago. Why are you bringing it up now? He's done lots of gigs in Germany since then.
You see, they don't like, what I'm finding in all my content, is one thing they don't like is evidence.
Yeah.
Because evidence defeats their argument.
Well, they make it up. They make the evidence. All the attacks on me, and there were huge attacks after the Berlin concert, which was, I believe, on the 6th. No, it was before that, because I went to Paris afterwards, which was on the 3rd of... Anyway, it doesn't matter when it was. Berlin was the 17th of May, I guess it must have been. And they suddenly exploded, and they all had the same photographs, pig with the Star of David on it, and I went, whoa, hold on a minute. that pig appeared 5 times in 2013 in Belgium. And it hasn't been seen since. And if you look at the pig that was actually in the Berlin shows, there's no symbols on it at all. It says, steal from the poor and give to the rich. And there's a few like Elbit Systems and Raytheon and arms manufacturers, but there's no religious or national symbols on it anywhere. You just made that up.
But, you know, what then happened, and this really got to me, was that you had ministers in England getting involved in an issue which is about a cultural production, your show.
Yeah.
And you had Starmer coming in with what many of us think is quite a libelous statement. It's shockingly... I find it astonishing that somebody who is in the legal profession would write a letter like that. But what you then got was Gove doing his, and his was much more reasoned and reasonable. So you've got the leader of the Labour Party behaving in this cavalier manner.
Yeah.
And the Tory spokesman actually saying, well, you know, if it is anti-Semitism, it really shouldn't happen, but there are rules to make sure that doesn't happen. So how do you figure that? What's going on there?
Well, obviously they've got rid of Corbyn using exactly the same process. They've fiddled their way through that, which is totally corrupt and undemocratic and against everything that one would expect the British people would stand for or not stand for. You know, the difference between you and me and Keir Starmer would say, and all the other Starmerites in the current leadership of what pretends to be a Labour Party and what pretends to be an opposition in the UK. Neither of them have seen the Labour files or the Lobby Part 1 UK or the Lobby Part 2 United States. When they stop them with a microphone, because I've seen it all, they're going up to and saying, what do you think of the Labour Party? What do you think of this or that? Haven't seen it. I'm sorry, I'm late for a meeting. I've seen all of that. You know, they're pretending that there's no case for them to answer. They're the ones who should be in the dock. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn may have been a bit weak-willed, but my God, at least he's a man of principle and he cares about things that we care about. He cares about human rights for a start. Keir Starmer doesn't give a fig for human rights. And Jeremy Corbyn cared about racism. I bet he cared about anti-Semitism too. In fact, I know he did. I know he did. Just like my mate Ken Loach and you and Naomi and all the other people who've been kicked into the sideline because they are my mother and your mother and they care about what's right and what's wrong. And these fuckers don't. They couldn't give a shit.
It's a game for them.
Yeah.
It's a power game. It's not real people. It's not real people whose lives are being destroyed or endangered or who are actually in fear. It's just a game of power for them. Now, one thing that people are telling me on Twitter is that there are no bans going on. There's no bans going on. We're free to perform and say and do what we like. What would be your response to that?
Well, we're not free, obviously. I mean, clearly, I can only really speak for myself, though I would like to speak for Ken Loach as well, but Ken will speak for himself, except that I know, because I know him quite well, how desperately upset he is by these attempts to cancel him. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this. It's scary. Yeah. And he's just made the old oak and gone to Cannes with it, to a rapturous applause, I have to say. And it was entered, you know, in competition for the Palme d'Or, and it didn't win it, but they loved the film, and they were which is, of course they did, because he's a brilliant, brilliant filmmaker. He's a Hamada. I don't know if you know who Hamada was. You know, he's a Japanese potter. And they take these things a bit more seriously. You become a national treasure. Hamada is a national treasure because he's so brilliant at making pots. Well, so's Ken Loach. He is a national treasure. to criticize him in any way is insane. They are, in my view, insane. I'm a national treasure too, by the way. I stand next to Ken Loach and I go, you know what, mate? We, with lots of other, you're a national treasure, all right? And we stand together. You people who are trying to pretend we're something, we're not. Anti-Semite, I'm an anti-Semite. Jack is an anti-Semite. Ken Loach, are you insane? Why are you making this nonsense up? I know why you're making it up. Because you are part of a lobby that is trying to support a vicious, racist endeavor in Palestine, which is indefensible, all right? The policies of the government of Israel are indefensible on any humane ground, any grounds that are based on law or human rights or doing the right thing, as my mother would say. It's indefensible what they're doing, and you know it. And because we say it openly and say we have to support our brothers and sisters, not just in Palestine, all over the world, all our brothers and sisters, irrespective of their religion or ethnicity or nationality, all deserve basic human rights. And Ken Loach and Jackie Walker and I, and many others, and Naomi Winborn Idrisi, will stand firm against you on that belief, that platform, Paris 1948, and we will never waver from it. So at the end of the day, eventually your walls will crumble and come crashing down because they cannot stand the, whatever you want to call it, they cannot stand the scrutiny of history. You are on the wrong side of history. What you're doing, it disgusts us, all right? So your efforts to discredit us are futile in the long run because you lie and lie and lie. And the lies about me and Ken Loach and Jackie being anti-Semite are so pitiful and so easy to disprove. Unfortunately, there are a lot of politicians who think they can jump on your bandwagon. Keir Starmer's the perfect example. He just lies and lies and lies and lies. And so you're in bed. Good luck. Enjoy that bed full of liars. Enjoy it if you can and while you can. Because our bed is a lot bigger. There are billions of us all over the world. People with hearts and souls.
So you know, as a final question, sort of, why aren't there more Roger Waters, Ken Loaches? I'm not going to count me. I'm talking about the people who have public recognition. Why aren't there more of you standing up?
People get frightened, I think. I know people who've been brave enough, and I'm not going to mention their names, but who have been brave enough to say to me, I think you're right, mate, and I admire you, but I can't stand on the barricades with you because I'm scared. And my career can be over in a heartbeat because there are people in the lobby, the Israeli lobby, who are very powerful in my industry. And if they decide to get you, it's quite easy. Unless, you know, maybe I'm lucky, maybe just because I'm hard-nosed and also because I've been very, very successful and in consequence there's some power. But I've been warned off more times than you can imagine, you know, by people.
Final question. How do we break out of it? As creatives, as people, as activists, how do we stop them?
Well, I'll tell you. Because I'll be, keep your mouth shut, don't be careful. No, fuck it, tell the truth.
Yeah.
Fight back. I'm going down fighting. If I go down, I'm going down fighting. I've at least written hundreds of songs or whatever. I've got a huge body of work behind me, and it's valuable. And the new piece of work is very, very valuable to people. They may like it or not. People may buy it or they may not. But you can't stop it. Or maybe you can, but if you do, you're a book burner. And you are. You're all bloody book burners. I made this point in Germany. I've written about it. I've written articles about it. You know, I stayed in, I'm trying to think whose hotel it is, in Berlin. I can't remember the name of the hotel, but it's got the bit of museum in front of it, which is glass in the floor of the thing. And it's on the spot where the Germans burned the books in Berlin in 1933, which then spread through the universities and the blah, 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 blah. And we all know what happened between 1933 and 1945. That is the slippery slope that we're on now. And it is the duty of artists and activists to tell the truth. And the truth is that the way you lot are behaving, anyway, I won't rave about it anymore because my missus keeps saying to me, "I don't get all shouty." Well, it's pretty hard not to get shouty. For me, anyway, you know, because I'm a shouty kind of person, really. And
yeah, I think I'm a bit of a shouty sort of person as
good
well.
for you.
And I think often if you are, you know, some sort of creative, it comes from an urge, a really important desire to communicate things that are important. You know, the reason why I did the lynching, the reason why I did the witch hunt, the reason why I stood up to them was because I learned from my mother, who'd gone through McCarthyism and had gone through the worst that McCarthyism could do to anybody.
Right.
That the one thing you have to do, and it's not just about saving the world, it's about saving yourself, is that you have to speak out. But I want to thank you very much, Roger. It's been a real good old natter.
yeah, it's been a good old matter.
It's been a good old natter.
Cheers, mate. Here's to good old man.
Here's to good old natter. I think we got some good stuff there.
Good.